We're not talking about the best of them. We're just talking about the rest of them.
Not the worst parts, but the best parts. And the best parts we have. The best of the rest.
Hello and good morning, Shadowloo. Welcome to Best of the Rest, the show where we take a second look at movies that were poorly received upon release and challenge ourselves to only talk about the things we like and what the movie does well. And this week, we are talking the 1994 film Street Fighter. My name is Chris Logan, and I am joined, as always, by the World Warrior, Andrew Williams. You ready for this one, Andrew?
That was very clever. I liked what you just did there.
Yeah, you appreciate that.
That was very nice. Yeah, I am ready to talk about Street Fighter. I have not sat down and watched this for some time outside, seeing the clips of the endless memes that came from it. But
of course,
of course. But yeah, I'm excited to dive in and talk about it beyond meme reasons.
Yes, I haven't watched this in a long time, but I certainly saw it a ton growing up, a ton throughout the 90s. Just like I said on Super Mario Bros., I don't think I ever actually owned this movie, but I saw it a lot on TV, maybe rentals. I don't know, but there's so many scenes that are burned into my brain. But yeah, sitting down to watch it for this podcast, definitely the first time I've watched it in a very long time. I might have watched it like once as an adult, but it wasn't to find the positives. We'll just say it, leave it at that.
Yeah.
But I'm excited to jump in, do what we do. Hashtag Positivity Podcast. Talk about what works in this movie. Because you know what, Andrew? A lot of people talk about this movie. A lot of people make memes about this movie. But what they're not doing is recognizing good performances, good set pieces, good writing, good stuff that happens in every movie. At least that's what we think. So we're going to jump in. We're going to find what there is to praise. As this month of video game adaptations roll on, we will be concluding next week with Mortal Kombat. Of course, the 1995 original films. We got some back-to-back fighting adaptations to close out the month. Exciting times. Let's set the stage for this one, though. Street Fighter, released December 23rd, 1994, made on a budget of $35 million. At the box office, it's a pretty nice hit, $99.4 million. So definitely well beyond expectations and well beyond that budget. However, critically, it is not well received at all. You could say this movie was panned. It holds just an 11% on Rotten Tomatoes. Audiences were not much kinder. Even though they turned out to see it in the box office, nobody is really saying very nice things about this. It has a 20% audience score on Rotten Tomatoes, which, the audience score, we expect it to be a little bit higher than the critics usually, but 20% is still not that good.
Yeah, the as I kind of joked about in our intro, the reception of this movie or the legacy of this movie has been jokes mostly. It is several key sequences have been memed, as the kids say. There's been a lot of people that go back and watch this for comedic value. I believe Riff Tracks has a very popular episode dedicated to Street Fighter. So yeah, it's not something that I think even now nobody's looking back at this and saying, hey, maybe we thought different. Maybe we should have been kinder to Street Fighter. It's still, it's not a movie that the reception has softened on over the years. And if anything, people have only doubled down.
Until today, Andrew.
Until today.
We're going to be very kind to this movie. This movie that was written and directed by Stephen E. Souza. Now, Mr. D'Souza here, no stranger to film, to action film specifically, has writing credits on 48 Hours, Commando, The Running Man. Heck, he was a co-writer on Die Hard, some heavy hitters. After Street Fighter, would go on to write Judge Dredd, which we've talked about on this very podcast. Was involved in some degree to Lara Croft Tomb Raider, which we talked about just last week, and went on to write the sequel to that movie, Cradle of Life. Now, as you may remember from previous episodes, somebody in the room here has a bit of a 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon connection to Stephen E. D'Souza. I believe that would be your father, Andrew, and I believe you reached out to him to get some clarification on what connection they have in the past. And could you share that with our listeners, please?
Yeah, I just inadvertently realized, though, that this essentially this probably 6 degrees me of Kevin Bacon's to, like, everybody in Hollywood at this point, because I can get myself to Bruce Willis. I can get myself to Bruce Willis through Stephen E. D'Souza, so I'm set. But
you're a made man.
But anyway, so I had heard my dad mention this. I think when we were watching Judge Dredd on TV once, or like somewhere, like Stephen E. D'Souza's name came up in the credits, and my dad was like, "Oh, hey, I knew him when I was younger," and I was like, "Really?" So like later on, I finally had the wherewithal to ask about it, and I'd known some of these details, and I'm sure he's mentioned a lot of this stuff before. But in preparation for this episode, since we would be talking about the man again, I decided to go straight to the horse's mouth on this one and get my dad to kind of reiterate what their relationship was. And I'm just going to recap our conversation for you here to kind of go through and explain what the extent of their relationship was. And so I asked my dad, "What's your Stephen E. D'Souza story again?" He was a friend of a friend. My dad said, "That's right. I was in his production of Cold Finger." Cold-Finger. So we're off to a tremendous start.
Cold-Finger.
Cold-Finger wanted to corner the world's ice supply along with his Eskimo bodyguard, Snowjob.
Can we talk about how good of a name Snowjob is? Because
it's tremendous.
It could, I would believe that to be a name in a Bond movie, right?
Yeah,
they
absolutely.
do that stupid stuff. But it's also a perfect parody name. That is, man, Steven had those writing chops from early on, it turns
out. That wit was there from the start. So I then asked my dad, what was his part? My dad just said he was an extra. He was one of the gang members that got beat up by James Bland, Agent 90 Proof.
James Bland. Okay, that one's not as clever as Snowjob, but it's still pretty good.
I think the Agent 90 Proof is the better part of that.
Stephen E. D'Souza, he made Threat Level Midnight. That's
Threat Level Midnight
exactly
before.
What this is.
And this had to, because this was, my dad would have been high school age, 16 to 18, which means we're talking the early to mid 60s. Obviously right after Goldfinger comes out in 1963. So I would assume this was not too long in the aftermath of that. And I summed up the conversation with, "Too bad this masterwork was lost to time." And my dad said, "Yes, most unfortunate."
It is. You've got to wonder if Steven has a copy of this. Right? I mean, what did they shoot it on 16 millimeter?
I'm sure you had to have some, whatever the cheapest camera you could find at the time was. But because again, we're talking we're not even camcorders. This is the mid 60s. So
right.
you're looking at even Super 8 maybe.
Yeah, they might have been cranking that camera for all I know.
Yeah, for that.
And cranking it.
Was there even sound? I mean, that sort of thing. Literally. So
it's a silent film. Those title cards that pop up.
Hey,
Snowjob apprehends the
Snowjob.
Yeah, that is man, that is incredible. We have to. I mean, Steven, he's in his 70s now. I think he's 74. So I don't
my dad's
know
age, so
if he's on Twitter. Yeah, everybody knows how old your dad is, of course. I don't know if he's on Twitter, but we got to reach out to him. He's got to have a guy. He's got to have an email. He's got to have some way that we can reach out to him. And I've got to think, if we have these details that have been provided to us by your dad, the name of this movie and Snowjob, if he hears some of those things, he's got to be wow, how does anyone out there know this stuff? And I think he would respond. So after this recording, and by the time this episode drops, I promise you, we will have found a way to reach out to him. Be sure to check us out on social media to find out what comes of that. But I can't wait to try to get some answers from him.
It would be, like you said, they're very specific details from a thing that I'm sure no civilized human has ever actually seen the final work of. God knows if it was ever actually even finished. I don't know if my dad ever saw a final film.
Yeah.
So, because, again, you would have had to show it on a film projector, VCRs in the mid 60s. But, yeah, it's just such an insane ridiculous story. And yeah, it means my dad was in a movie Stephen E. D'Souza made. So I can probably be connected to Kevin Bacon in Six Steps now.
Probably, yeah. Your dad does he have a SAG card?
I don't know. I don't know. I think he's got some royalties coming his way though.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's the full context. I know we mentioned it, I think, in the Judge Dredd episode, but there you have it, the full scope of my dad's working relationship with Stephen E. D'Souza.
Well, that is fantastic. You know, I was going to say that Street Fighter was his first theatrical directorial effort, but he did also make a film festival level movie called Arnold's Wrecking Co. early in his career. But even before that, we know he made Coldfinger. And will the world ever see it? Remains to be seen, but I certainly hope so.
Man, just imagine if us talking about this on this show and then reaching out to Steven is what leads to that movie being seen for the first time. Folks, chills.
You heard it here first. All right, well, it's time to jump into this movie that was written and directed by Sir Stephen E. Souza. I don't know why I called him Sir. But, Andrew, before we cross that threshold where we jump into the cast and the scenes and we can only say positive things, I've got to talk a little bit about this movie and how it relates to the video games. Because me personally, I am a huge fan of the Street Fighter franchise. I grew up on Street Fighter 2 like most people in the 90s, but I've definitely stuck with it. Street Fighter 4 is the greatest fighting game of all time, in my opinion. I even enjoy 5. It has its critics, but I really like these characters. I like these games. I like the lore. And boy, does this movie take some liberties. And it's so strange to me because like one reason that Steven got this job is because he was a fan of the games. But he intentionally didn't incorporate some of the supernatural stuff, like the powers of the characters, which is fine. I think it's a weird decision, but it's pretty common in video game adaptations. That's one thing. But like entire nationalities are changed for some characters, and not even like in the form of whitewashing necessarily. It's not like they just cast a bunch of Hollywood people. It's like E. Honda is changed to Hawaiian for some reason. Guile, famously, is an all-American character. He's played by Jean-Claude Van Damme, and it's a wild. Backstory change. Some good guys are bad guys, and bad guys are good guys. It is so bonkers to watch as like a big fan of the games and some of the things they change. But then there's other little details and Easter eggs that like only a diehard fan would get. And the mix of those two is just so weird. And I bring this up because I was surprised in researching this movie to learn that Capcom financed this. The creators of the video game put almost all of the budget up and were in charge, or at least overlooked, the creative process the entire way. So, like, these are the people that made the game that are like, yeah, sure, you can mix that up. I don't care. So, yeah, I guess it doesn't make much sense as a fan to be upset if Capcom's the one doing it, but it's just, it's kind of bizarre.
It is. And yeah, you would definitely be the greater expert than me on how this functions as an adaptation, and the answer is it doesn't. But I think it's interesting because there's also moments where they like go through like painstaking moments to like recreate visuals of things, like create all these key elements of things where it's like we want you to see like Vega with his mask and his claws, and we want it to look like all of that. It's like see moments like that where there's this attention to detail in the appearance of characters. And then other things are just changed when, you're not really sure why. So yeah, we don't need to go too far down that rabbit hole, but it is, even watching it now, there's things about it that I think are really cool. But there's definitely a lot of changes where you can't help but kind of pause and go,
Things that make you go, for sure. Even like in Street Fighter 2, there's a bonus level when you're fighting through arcade mode, where you have to crush as many barrels as possible. There's a reference to that in the game. There's a barrel that says Capcom on it. It's like that level of detail is being referenced. But
nobody fights a car. Ridiculous.
That's what was missing from this movie. All right. I had to I had to let that out, to verbalize that, acknowledge it before we jump in. But you know what we're going to do? Hashtag Positivity Podcast. Talk about the positives of this movie. What works? What's fun? What's happening? Let's jump into it. Street Fighter. The tyrannical M. Bison is holding members of the allied nation hostage and demands $20 billion for their release. Colonel Guile, alongside a ragtag crew that all have a score to settle with Bison, leads an attack on his headquarters in the country of Shadowloo. As the good guys close in on the madmen, some of Bison's henchmen begin to rethink which side of the battle they want to be on. Sides. I mean, that's basically it. I know that's really simple, but that's basically all we're looking at here, right?
Yeah, I mean, it's a fairly straightforward premise. It does, like you said, it's interesting because the credits very clearly stated is based off the game Street Fighter 2,
right?
Which the setup of Street Fighter 2 is also pretty simple. Bison's holding a tournament. That's it. But we take a very different route with the character here, and with the setup here to kind of go with a more politically charged narrative of Bison being this ruthless dictator who, instead of having an organization called Shadowloo, basically has a country that he's taken over.
Yeah, that's so weird.
It's an odd switch, and like obviously some of you may be thinking, "Hey, that sounds like Mortal Kombat." Street Fighter did it first. But
I mean, let's be real. Enter the Dragon
did it first. I mean, sure, I don't even know if Enter the Dragon is technically the first. We've gathered everyone. It's probably not, honestly. But yeah, it's not a particularly I won't say it's not an original setup, but it's not it's a well-used concept. But yeah, so we've got a very different setup, and the ways they then go about introducing some of the characters are interesting. To put it mildly.
Yes. Well, let's jump into those characters. Let's talk about this cast, starting with the high point, the best casting and best performance. Every episode, we recognize one person who goes so far above and beyond the Call of Duty with their performance that they elevate the quality of the entire film. We recognize that person by giving them the Mark Strong Award. Andrew, I mean, should we just say it at the same time? Who gets the Mark Strong Award? 3, 2, 1. Raul Julia
as M.
Bison. 100%.
Like there's no question.
If you disagree with that, delete this podcast. Stop listening. Don't
stop listening. Don't stop
listening.
listening.
Tell 5 friends. Spread the word. Help us out.
Get on Discord and explain to us how your life went wrong. Because trust me, we want to know. We want to know where you took a wrong step that leads you to the wrong conclusion on this.
I mean, there's no
question. There's
good performances.
Absolutely.
There's other actors that are showing up, putting good performances, but Raul Julia was the frickin' man. He gave 110% to every role he did, even when he's literally on his deathbed. This was his final theatrical film, and
he literally dies before this movie comes out. Like it's that close to his death. And the only reason you even have any idea that he might not be in good health is because he's so gaunt compared to like Adam's family.
Yeah.
That's like your only indicator that maybe something's up. But that dude, 110%.
So we should just officially say R.A.P. Raul Julia, gone too soon. Freaking legendary actor. But Andrew, let's start talking about his performance in this movie. Go ahead. Why is he getting the award? Yes.
Because he rules. No, I've made this comment before, and it sounds a little backhanded, but I don't mean it that way. I said this about Morbius, which I have, but Matt Smith in Morbius feels like he's in a very different movie from everybody else in Morbius. Matt Smith is the one who feels like he kind of understood the assignment, and is kind of being hammy and over the top. In this movie, it genuinely feels to me at times that Raul Julia is acting in a very different movie from everybody else, because he's genuinely, honestly making Bison into this, like he even said, like Richard III and stuff like that is his inspiration for Bison. And that's like classic, like Shakespearean villain stuff. And so and all of that shows in the final performance. It's this grandiose, adding a little bit of what's that term, Chris?
Gravitas.
There it is. Never. Oh, sounds so good. But but he's just so great, and like the speeches you get, like the very famous one, for M. Bison, it was Tuesday. Like it comes off so well, and he just sounds so believable as this megalomaniacal villain who has all these weird codes where he's like, the honor of like unarmed combat and things like that. And he's just given it everything that he has, and it 100% carries this movie.
The speech you just referenced is a famous line from this movie because it stands out because it's so cold-blooded and so well written and so perfectly delivered by Raul Julia in this campy, goofy, silly action movie. But that hits, and you could drop that into any bad guy from any James Bond movie or any other action movie, and it totally freaking works. I considered using that for my opening line of this episode, but I don't even want to like repeat those words. I like trying to do like impressions and stuff on the show, but I'm not even going to try. So what I'm going to do is in case you haven't heard it and want a refresher, just want the joy of hearing it again. Let's listen to Raul Julia deliver these epic lines.
My father saved his village at the cost of his own life. You had him shot as you ran away. A hero at 1,000 paces.
I'm sorry. I don't remember any of it.
You don't remember?
For you, the day Bison graced your village was the most important day of your life. But for me, it was Tuesday.
It's just so good.
So good. No one else.
No one else. And moving beyond, like Raul Julia, he's just, a lot of people only know him for probably this and the Addams Family, which is perfectly fine. Those are genuinely, honestly, his Addams Family performance as Gomez. Like, if you said that was the pinnacle of his acting career, I don't even think he would have a problem with somebody telling him that.
It's genuinely, it's so good.
It's genuinely so good, and it's another instance of a movie that is so, like the fact that and the Brady Bunch kind of came out in that early 90s like wave before kind of the idea of those meta narratives was a thing.
Yeah.
Is just actually really kind of impressive, because they're movies that have this level of self-awareness that really didn't take off until a lot later. And even later sequels and television films of those things would like lose that charm completely and kind of just start churning things out. But those original films
even
are
Josie and the
just so
Pussycats
good.
In 2000 felt like it was ahead of the game, right?
Right.
Even that felt like it was too early, and these were happening in the early 90s.
These were happening half a decade before that, and in the case of the Addams Family, even sooner. So it's him just putting everything into these performances. He's got a couple of other really good performances. I mean, he's got tons of great performances throughout his career. Another one that I like, it's a bit of a mixed reception movie, but is Eyes of Laura Mars, that he shows up in. That's in the late 70s, so if you want something from a completely different time of his career, I would check that out. But, I mean, he's Raul Julia. He speaks for himself, as you just heard.
Yeah, so I want to make it clear, like, this isn't like a legacy Mark Strong award. It is very much for his performance as Bison, which I think is universally recognized as the best part of this movie. I've got to agree with that. And just legendary career. Like I said, most people, especially our age, to be frank, probably only know him, at least at first, from the Addams Family movies and Street Fighter. Because before that, as a kid in the 90s, I don't know about like his Broadway work or his Shakespeare work. I'm not going to know about that, but you dig into his career afterwards, and like how much he accomplished as a Puerto Rican born actor is tremendous. I mean, beyond just breaking ground for Puerto Ricans and for minorities everywhere. It's just very important work. Legendary career. I mean, we could gush about him all day.
Yeah.
I think we've made our point clear. But big Mark Strong award for Mr. Raul Julia.
He embodied. If this were the first movie we did, it would probably be called the Raul Julia Award. Genuinely, it's that. It's 100%. That kind of performance.
That is a perfect way to put it.
It is that good, and it is not, like I said, it is not a joke. It's not anything. It's just so good. You can't go wrong.
Let's go through the rest of this cast. Of course, we have to talk about Jean-Claude Van Damme as Guile. Now, we've mentioned it already. This is strange casting when you look at the source material. But you know what? Capcom was in charge of this. They spent a lot of money to get Jean-Claude locked down. He was a big star at the time, and this is an action movie that is very much up his alley. And, you know, Guile's known for his kicks. Jean-Claude's known for his kicks. There's maybe some kind of connection there. They put the American tattoos on him. They kind of dyed his hair. They did their part to try to make him look like Guile. But we're not here to talk about how it functions as an adaptation. We're here to talk about the performance. And what is being asked of him is a straightforward, good guy action star who has his quips and does his kicks. And he shows up and he does just that.
Yep. He's got his kicks, he's got his quips, he's got the quips? I don't know. But the quips. But yeah, it's an odd thing he's being asked to do, to be an all-American hero. But like I said, he's designed as kind of having this rivalry with Bison, and obviously that's kind of our big final fight, is the final Guile versus Bison showdown. And yeah, he's making the most of it.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Jean-Claude a few times on this show. He's actually a Mark Strong Award winner, so we're both big fans of the guy. This might not be our favorite performance of his, looking at his whole filmography, but I'm always happy to see Jean-Claude do his thing. But yeah, honestly, there's only so much you can say about it. I mean, it's Jean-Claude being Jean-Claude, doing what he's paid to do.
Exactly. There's only, at the end of the day, if you're a fan, I think you will enjoy it, and if you're not, I don't think he's going to sway you with what he's doing here.
Ming-Na Wen plays Chun-Li, fan favorite from the video games. Another one, they changed the backstory a bit. She's a journalist here for some reason instead of Interpol cop. But hey, she is Chun-Li. She kicks ass, just like the video games. She has the look down. She looks like Chun-Li. You know, we talk about these departures for some of these castings. I think this is excellent casting. She, as an actress, probably most known ultimately for Mulan, but she's been working for decades at this point. Lots of high-profile stuff. Sort of is one of the bigger names looking back at the cast today. But yeah, playing,
at the time,
playing Chun-Li. This movie has this thing where by the end of the movie, it's like every character has a story arc, and that story arc is getting into their video game costume. So
yes,
like she's just a reporter in the beginning, and then by the end, she's got like the signature hair, and they kind of give her like a red version of the outfit, and that happens to almost every character here.
Yeah, everybody goes through like you said. That's essentially their quest. The only person who kind of starts there is Bison, and everybody else just has to
Guile.
Get
Guile's always wearing his fatigues. But
Guile's always wearing the fatigues.
He just takes off his jacket at the end so you can see his tattoos.
Yes, he gets the wife beater there. We gotta have a better name for those types of shirts. Tank top.
Sure.
It's
but it's specifically the kind you wear under your shirt, though. So you got to differentiate it from just a regular tank top, Andrew.
It's the undertop.
Technically, they're called A shirts. That's what it says on the package.
He takes off his jacket and gets in his A shirt.
But that just sounds dumb.
It sounds better than wife beater, Chris.
I'm not going to argue with that.
So Guile gets in his A shirt, and he looks dope while he does it. But yeah, Ming-Na Wen is great. I mean, obviously she's had a more recent turn, showing up in some of the late stage Disney Star Wars stuff as Fennec Shand. Showing up in The Mandalorian and the Book of Boba Fett. And I think even did a voice in one of the animated shows they did. Also got a big following for her role on Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D., another Disney adjacent production. And then obviously being the voice in Mulan way back in the day. She's getting that Disney money for a while.
All
And,
right, Andrew. So
always be closing.
give me a pie chart here of her booth at a comic convention. People coming up to get autographs. What percentage is for Mulan? What percentage is for Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D.? And what percentage is for Street Fighter?
You're looking at a solid 80% for Street Fighter. That's
Clearly the big roll.
that's the hard math there. No, I would say these days it's probably an equal split of Star Wars, Agents of S.H.I.E.L.D. and Mulan, and then maybe like the 0.6% somewhere is the dozen of Street Fighter.
Look, that would be me. That's what I would get.
Dozens. Yeah. But yeah, and that's not even talking about how she was on Stargate for a while. She did voices on Phineas and Ferb. She's literally been out there forever. I mean, she was on the Spawn animated show. She's got tons of cred. There is no amount of cred. She's got ER cred. I mean, she has been a part of she's got probably more franchise crossover than a lot of people at this point. But yeah, it's interesting to look back because when this movie came out, that was 94. So she was not, really, Mulan's 98 and it was a cartoon. So, I mean, she's not really going to get like a lot of, immediate recognition from that. The Joy Luck Club was the year before this, which she did get a lot of recognition for, but she was really just starting out. But yeah, she looks the part. She, like I said, she gets to be awesome and it's pretty cool.
Damian Chapa plays Ken Masters, and Byron Mann plays Ryu. Now, one thing I do want to credit this movie for, because we've talked a bit about it, they make departures from the video games, but legitimately, it helps me pronounce a lot of these characters' names correctly, like Sagat, for example, or Zangief, because before this I would say Zangief or Saget, like it's Bob Saget. So I cracked the movie for that, because until I hear it said out loud. However, the movie incorrectly pronounces Ryu. The movie says Ryu, which is not how you pronounce that, folks. It's Ryu. However, in an interview with Byron, he said the reason for that is because Damien, who plays Ken, had trouble saying Ryu. He kept saying Ryu. And whenever he brought this up on set, he's like, well, actually, it's pronounced Ryu. And they brought it to Steven, and Steven's like, you know what? Let's go with Ryu. That's going to be easier for Americans to understand. And they just went with Ryu for our poor, sensitive American ears, I guess. But of all the things, for the most part, it's getting the names right. But it does bother me a little bit. #PP that they say Ryu and taught a whole generation of kids how to say this name wrong. It is Ryu, folks. But we're getting off base a little bit. The pair play Ken and Ryu, who are, Ryu is basically the mascot for the video game series, probably the most popular character in the series. And Ken is his essential clone, especially in Street Fighter 2. They're basically the same character with different heads, and they've gone on to diverge a little bit. But they're always together, they're sparring partners, and the movie makes it like they're both sort of drifters and con artists, and always trying to pull a fast one on the bad guys. So they kind of consider themselves good guys by default, even though they're doing bad things, but they're doing it to the bad guys, kind of living in that moral gray area. And I made the joke earlier about other arcs is getting into their costume, which, yes, the two of them do.
These guys are no exception.
It happens to them. But they also find the moral compass and end up being like legitimate good guys by the end of the movie. And it's a nice little arc. Considering how many characters this movie is juggling, it is nice to see that even characters with diminished screen time still get a fully realized arc.
Yeah. And the one thing, I mean, they do bring it through to this movie is these guys are linked. They are pretty much together the entire length of the film, outside a brief moment of tension, because, any tried and true tested friendship has to have its tests. And yeah, they, like I said, they are no exception, where they get their game accurate costumes towards the climax of the film, when they have their big kind of final showdown with Sagat and Vega. But yeah, they're both up to the task.
Kylie Minogue is in this movie, Andrew.
She is.
She plays Cammy. International pop star Kylie Minogue. And she has some acting credits. I'm not trying to downplay that, but she's mostly known for an actress, and this is pretty early in her career. An Australian actress, which is sort of part of the reason she got cast, apparently. The Australian Acting Guild wanted to have an Australian representation in the movie, and ended up being Kylie Minogue, but she does a really good job. I mean, she's, for a supporting character that doesn't have too much screen time, I think she brings a lot to the role. You're surely not pointing at it and being like, oh no, you're a pop star, you can't act. I mean, I think she does a good job with what she's given. They actually toned down her costume a little bit. In the video game, she's wearing essentially a one-piece bathing suit that is very narrow as it goes down. And then she has...
Very high cut.
Yes. And then she has like camo painted on her bare legs. So in the movie, she wears that one piece, but she has like camo pants on. She's actually wearing pants, which I've I'm sure Kylie appreciated that. But yeah, it's good. It's cool to see Cammy in a movie, and I don't know. What is there to say about it? It's Kylie Minogue. It's awesome.
Yeah, I mean, it's Kylie Minogue. It's such a weird thing to like. That was when I was like watching the credits for this. It was like Raul Julia, Jean-Claude Van Damme, like Ming Na Wen, Kylie Minogue. I was like, what is this movie? Like, what is happening here? Like, what is genuinely, honestly going on? And
Andrew, you have a 6 degrees connection to Kylie Minogue.
I do. That is amazing. It's like 4 degrees. It's literally like her to Stephen E. Souza to my dad to me. 4 degrees between me and Kylie Minogue. That is amazing.
So I'm 5 degrees away from Kylie Minogue?
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
That basically makes us best friends.
I'm updating my Twitter profile right now.
Exactly. But it is interesting because I've seen pictures of Kylie Minogue in like a more accurate Cammy costume. They just ultimately, I guess, didn't end up using it for this. But yeah, it's Kylie Minogue. And like you said, she's up to the task. She's at no point, like you said, does it feel like she's, you know, I was about to say she's not worse than anybody else in this movie, but she's, but that's not very nice.
Not bringing it down.
No, but yeah, she's up to the task. She's on par with most of her co-stars, bringing up what she needs to bring to the table. And it's Kylie Minogue. How are you going to complain about that?
We have Roshan Seth as Dalsum. Now, I'm sorry I sound like a broken record. It's a bit of a departure from the character, but in this case, maybe for the better. In the video games, Dalsum is a fighter from India, which means he, of course, breathes fire and practices yoga.
Of course.
So they make him a scientist. They give him a little bit more depth to the character, and probably my favorite instance of transforming into the video game look, because in the video game he's shirtless and bald and has like these rings around his arms and neck. In the movie, he's a scientist with hair, but he's a prisoner of Bison, so he has these shackles on his necks and arms. But then there's a fire which apparently burns his shirt and his hair off, so he's left bald with rings around his limbs, just like the video game.
Oh my god.
That is, bless you, Stephen, for writing that into the movie. But genuinely, I like how he's playing the character. It's very sweet. He's definitely, I wouldn't go as far as say he's the heart of the movie, but he does have a pretty, one of the bigger emotional beats. He's taking care of Guile's old friend Charlie, and he goes out of his way to take care of him as best as he can. And he's got a few lines that I really like, and bring some emotional depth to the character.
Yeah, basically, in this movie, we'll get to it in a bit, but Blanca is basically a prototype super soldier for Bison to have, and his character is trying to make sure that he doesn't just turn into some ruthless monster, basically trying to help him maintain a sense of humanity. And yeah, like you said, gets to deliver some pretty good emotional beats. I remember Roshan Seth primarily, probably from Indiana Jones and the Temple of Doom, but yeah, he's doing a good job here.
Andrew Briniarski plays Zangief, and probably my runner-up for the Mark Strong Award. I mean, it's Raul Julia, 100% all the way. But I love this casting. I love this performance. Genuinely, he's written to be a comedic character, and he nails it. Every single funny line he's given is delivered perfectly. I laugh at almost every scene that he's in. It's so well done. I mean, they nail the look. The dude's a bodybuilder, so he's super jacked. He looks the part. I don't know if he's Russian, but he clearly has an accent delivering his lines that sounds good enough to me. And it's just a really fun performance. This is talking about meeting people at a con. I would love to meet him at a con and get him to sign something Zangief related.
Yeah, he's from Philadelphia, so he's not Russian whatsoever.
Good acting,
but yeah, he's got some comedic beats. The scene where they show like the truck crashing into the place on the television, and he's just like, change the channel, like that's gonna stop what's happening from happening. But yeah, He and actually another actor in this movie I both remember from a movie called Necessary Roughness, a football movie from the early 90s, where he just plays one of the members of one of the football teams. But he also notably played Leatherface in the Texas Chainsaw reboot and prequel to the reboot in the early 2000s. So getting his own multi-franchise cred up there.
Yeah.
But yeah, he is bringing exactly what he needs to this part in a way that's, like you said, it's above and beyond. He's given it his all.
Wreck-It Ralph, great movie.
Yes,
but it got a little bit of I use this word lightly, a little bit of blowback for making Zangief part of the bad guys club, because the character Zangief is not a bad guy. And the director or the writer even came out and was like, well, when I played the game, I always lost to him. So in my mind, he was a bad guy. A really poor excuse for making him a bad guy. Yeah. But for most of this movie, he's a bad guy. So I wonder if maybe this was the inspiration for that happening in Wreck-It Ralph. So everybody who wrote their angry letters to Disney, direct them to Stephen E. D'Souza.
Don't do that. We're trying to get him to talk to us.
Don't do that.
Yeah.
Grand L. Bush plays Balrog, the prize-fighting boxer. I'm sorry if this is getting old. That's what he does in the video games. In the movie, he was a boxer, but his reputation was ruined by Bison, so now he can no longer be a boxer. But of course, by the end of the movie, he has boxing gloves on. I don't know
why wouldn't
you? But yeah, he gets his trademark look, and he does have the trademark hairline of Balrog, which is a very extreme widow's peak shaved into his head. And not much to say about the performance, not a lot of screen time, but it's Balrog. He's in the movie.
Indeed, he is recast as one of Chun-Li's film crew, basically, and yeah. But like I said, he gets his moment to switch into boxing mode at the end.
Andrew, were you aware that in Japan, the names of the 4 bosses are different?
Yes, because M. Bison was supposed to be a riff on Mike Tyson. So he was given to Balrog, and M. Bison. Yeah, when you think about it like that, you're just like, oh god, M. Bison is not even supposed to be his name.
Yeah, so, well, that was my fun bit. I have nothing to say. Let's move on. No, right. Yeah, you're exactly right. I'm glad you know that. It's, in Japan, M. Bison is actually called Vega, and Vega is actually called Balrog, and then Balrog is actually called M. Bison, which, as you said, is a play on Mike Tyson. And whenever they ported it over to North America, they switched those names around to try to avoid a lawsuit because they didn't want they don't want Mike Tyson. M. Tyson getting upset. Which apparently Mike Tyson just never goes to Japan and would never find out the truth. I think it's so funny that like in a pre-internet age you can do something like that. And
you can do that, but just don't translate it.
But yeah, so I wonder if do you think those names fit better? Do you think looking at M. Bison, does he look like a Vega? I think Vega being Balrog makes a lot of sense. That I can see that, and of course
Vega being Balrog makes sense. I mean, Tyson being Vega. Vega just sounds like a generic villain name, I guess. Like
Yeah.
M. Bison to me sounds like it has more character. Like, and I think Vega actually fits him much more. I actually think the switch names work better for all of them. I that's my stance, and I'm sticking to it.
Yeah. I don't know if that's a hot take or not, but it's a take.
I assume it's not, because I only serve up my takes freezing cold after I know it's safe. So
Robert Mamone plays Charlie / Blanca. And let's get it out of the way. These are two separate characters in the video games.
Yes.
In Street Fighter II, Guile's purpose, his mission, is to avenge the death of his war buddy, or his military buddy, Charlie. And we actually never see Charlie. At the time they made this movie, the character Charlie didn't actually exist. We just knew his name from the lore. And then they made Street Fighter Alpha, which is a prequel to 2, and we get to see Charlie. And I wish this design was around before they made this movie, because Charlie, you got to Google it if you've never seen him. He's got the most anime hair you've ever seen. It goes straight up in the front and then straight back, and I would love to see like a literal adaptation of that. But again, this is technically the first appearance of Charlie. But they merge him with the character of Blanca. He turns into Blanca. That is not how it's supposed to go down. But hey, that's how it goes down in the movie. These things happen. But there's not too much to say about the performance, because you don't see him much as Charlie. He gets dispatched of rather quickly. And he's in like this chamber for most of the movie. And then he finally comes out at the end, and he looks like Lou Ferrigno's Hulk, right? I mean, it's just it's a guy painted green. They put some prosthetics on his face, a big red wig, and he's Blanca.
Yep.
I mean, that's about as good of a job as you can do as Blanca, right? I mean, what is it?
Yeah, I mean, as far as the look goes, I would say as far as the Blanca look goes, I think it's pretty good overall, especially for the time, outside trying to make it CG. We just have a very odd path to getting there. This is probably the strangest path to like getting somebody in their video game costume that there is. Because it's a whole, like I said, the idea is that this is like a prototype of Bison's super soldiers that he wants to take over the world with. And so it's definitely a long walk to go a short distance.
Miguel A. Nunez plays DJ. DJ in the video games is Jamaican. The character of DJ in the movie is Jamaican.
Nailed it.
First try. Good job, movie. He's hilarious. Just like Zangief, his character is consistently making me laugh throughout the movie. He is technically working for the bad guys, but he is clearly only doing it for the money. And as soon as things start to get dangerous, he is quick to bail on Bison and try to sneak away with as much riches as he can. And it just a lot of great comedic beats. He nails every one of them. Really fun performance.
He's very good. You may actually remember him as well from Friday the 13th Part 5, A New Beginning. He plays Demon.
Dude,
one of the
most memorable part of that movie, yes.
Yeah.
He ate enchiladas.
Yeah. So he's got a habit for bit parts where he kind of steals the show inadvertently.
Yes.
But yeah,
should we say that bit, because not everybody has seen Friday the 13th Part 5, but he's on a date in the back of his van, and
you do.
They ate Mexican food. They ate enchiladas, and it's really starting to upset his stomach. So he exits the van and goes to an outhouse, where he gets killed by Jason. Like, that's it. But the fact that
his unfortunate end
talks about the things that he talks about, and you see him on the toilet, and it's a very fun,
memorable kill.
Yes.
But either way, and that was 9 years before this. So I mean, didn't lose his edge. But yeah, he's got a fun part here. He's the guy that like kind of appeals to Zangief's inner kind of tries to appeal to him that they're just pawns for Bison. They're not actually, he doesn't care. He's not going to watch out for them. But like you said, he's watching out for himself. It's a fun performance. That's definitely on the bit part side, but he's a guy that's making the most of that screen time.
Greg Rainwater plays T-Hawk. Now, there's not much to say about this performance because it's not until the end of this movie that this character starts wearing a headband, and then I realize, oh, that's supposed to be the Native American character, T-Hawk, and that's it. I don't even know like what lines he says. It's a very, very bit part. But I do want to shout out that they cast a Native American to play a Native American character. And I hope I'm using... I think T-Hawk is from like current day Mexico, which, Andrew, does Native American apply to all the Americas, or is it just modern day North America?
Again, I believe they spread past, because when the Native Americans obviously were primarily living here, the concepts of Mexico, the United States, right. Canada, those didn't really exist. So I think it is definitely likely, if not very probable, that despite having Mexico as his nationality, he has a deep tie to the Native American tribes.
There you go. So, Native American as a Native American character, full casting, even if it is just for a bit part.
Yeah, I agree. Like I said, it's a small thing, but it definitely matters, especially when you still had things sometimes decades later choosing not to take that route.
Jay Tavari plays Vega. Now, this might be, from adaptations of video game, my favorite casting. I've got no complaints about this. They nailed the look. They nailed the characterization. He's very vain, very handsome. He is muscular but slender. He's got the claws. He's got the mask. I mean, this is Vega. They freaking nailed it. He's got the snake tattoo. I love everything about this casting. Not a ton of lines. It's mostly just a look and a performance and the fight scenes. But it's I think a perfect casting for Vega.
I agree. This is the one, like I said, where they really go all out to get the look. And to their credit, he looks like this the whole movie. This is not somebody that gets there. Yeah. He starts out this way. And yeah, it's a really good look. Like I said, he's basically Sagat's henchman for most of the movie. He's his prized fighter after Sagat retired. The Iron Fist, as he calls himself. I don't know if that's accurate at all. I don't know. I don't think so. But
no, that's all new.
But yeah, it's he's got that look, and he's got the charisma. He's like, when he's playing up to the crowd, stuff like that. It works. It's believable. So yeah, but that look is awesome.
So cool. And he's even whenever he's so fighting, cool. He's got the classic, I don't know, should I do it? Type yells as he fights. It's really good.
Nailed it.
Thanks. Oh boy.
We're almost there, folks.
Home stretch of characters here. It's a long roster. Peter Tuiasosopo plays Honda. I mentioned it already. He's a Japanese sumo wrestler, but he's Hawaiian in the movie. Whatever. He plays Honda. Another pretty fun performance. He's got some comedic lines. Definitely one of the good guys, teaming up with Cammy and Balrog. And so really fun extended fight with Zangief that is just woven through the last act of this movie.
Yes.
Probably the highlight of this performance. He gets to do a lot of the poses and moves from the video game, which is always fun. He gets, I think, like blood smeared on his face to look like the war paint that he wears in the video game. That's how he comes into his costume. But it's another fun performance.
Yeah, like I said, he's kind of the guy in the van for Chun-Li's film production. But this is the other actor in this movie that was also in the Scott Bakula vehicle Necessary Roughness football film. He played a Hawaiian football center. But yeah, it's a fun performance. He gets a few moments where they get to show off some characters, some toughness, some resilience, and then has a whole fight with Zangief where they dub in Godzilla noises, because of course they do. But yeah, he's again making the most of his screen time.
Wes Studi plays Sagat, and he's sort of the number 2 bad guy. That's kind of his role more in the video games and the movie, but he's a big bad guy in Shadowloo. And as you mentioned, he used to be a cage fighter before Vega's, the new up-and-comer, kind of took his place. And great performance. I mean, he looks like a bad guy. He's intimidatingly a bad guy. He delivers lines really well. I mean, if Raul Julia was in this movie, I would say he's delivering the best bad guy lines. But he's in a movie with Raul Julia. So
Yeah.
that's not
Unfortunately, there was no hope for you after that. Yeah, this is obviously Wes Studi is great. Obviously from Mystery Men, an alum of the show. Also, Last of the Mohicans, Heat, bunch of stuff with Michael Mann. But yeah, he's definitely chewing the scenery all the chance he gets. He's somebody here that I guess you could say understands the assignment. So he's chewing all the scenery he can, just living it up, playing this villain. Gets a fun kind of 2-on-2 fight with Vega against Ken and Ryu at the end, kind of capping off that subplot because they're kind of woven throughout the whole movie. His reaction when Bison tries to pay him with the Bison bucks is always hilarious to me.
Yes.
Where can I get some Bison? But folks, if you know where I can get some Bison bucks with Raul Julia's face on them, email us BOTRcast. I looked on eBay, I didn't see anything, but
Yes,
let us know. Email the show. Everybody needs one of those because they're going to be. They can't be worth any. I mean, I'm sure there's many cryptocurrencies they're worth more than. So
we're going to reach out to Stephen E. D'Souza. The first thing we're asking about is Coldfinger.
And
second thing we're asking is Bison bucks.
Bison bucks. You got a stack of those somewhere? Can you send us some? But yeah, he's fantastic. He's great in everything he's in. Not always in the front, usually not, but always giving a great performance when he's there. So this is no exception.
That takes us through all of the video game fighters and the actors that play them. But there's two quick shout outs I want to do in this cast. First one being Kenya Sawada, who plays a character named Captain Sawada. Now, this is not a character from the video games, but this is who Capcom wanted to play Ryu. He's a very popular Japanese actor. However, apparently his English was not too good in 1994, and Steven just didn't think it would work out. So they created this role for him. He is Guile's right-hand man. He doesn't have many lines, if any I can think of, but you see his face a lot. They make it a point to feature him.
I think he's dubbed in every line he has.
That's
he does
right.
Speak. Yeah.
He does stand up during, like, when he's laying out the plan for the attack on Bison's headquarters. I do remember that, him standing up in that very clearly dubbed lines. Good catch. But they did that because, again, he's big in Japan, and they wanted to, of course, appeal to that audience, where the game comes from and everything. So, interesting casting. If you didn't know any of that, obviously as an American, we don't know who this guy is, most likely. Yeah. But it kind of stands out as they feature him a lot, and that's the reason why. Mm-hmm. Also, I love a quick performance from Simon Callow, who doesn't even have a name. They just say he's an AN official. But he's the one that shows up, and he tries to shut down Guile's operation. He's like, Colonel Guile, we're going to pay Bison his ransom. You and your men need to stand down. And he's wearing a suit, and he's got these dorky glasses on. He's got a briefcase and all of his papers. And he's like, now go tell your men. And he looks all smug and proud of himself. And then Guile gives like this rousing speech of like, they want us to quit, but we're going to go take them on. And he gets all flustered, like, oh gosh, and like, adjusts his glasses and chases after Guile. Yeah. And Guile takes off on a speedboat, splashes him with the water. He's just a total stooge. And he plays the role so well. Like, it's not easy to play like the heel character, the joke character, the one that makes the good guy look good, but he does it so well. Such a punchable face and goofy look. I had to shout out that performance. I love it so much.
Yeah, I mean, you listening may remember him most as Vincent Cadby from Ace Ventura: When Nature Calls, the lead villain of that piece, where everything you just said 100% applies. Yes. He is
like the same glasses. Now I'm thinking about it.
He looks like it's the same character. It literally looks like he could have just walked from one set to the other. But in that movie, a very unlikable, deeply annoying, punchable character. And in here, he's only got, he's here for maybe 5 minutes of screen time, not a whole lot of time. But in that time, you hate him. You can't stand him. He knows exactly how to just dive into that at that specific place to make himself as deeply unlikable as possible. But yeah, this is no exception.
Woo! And that's the cast of our movie. It's time.
All right, folks. See you next week.
That's our lineup. Man, this is a deep cast. And a quick, hashtag positivity podcast. I got to shout this out. Going through those, that casting, like, line by line here. I made the joke about the arc as they get into their costume, but a lot of these characters do have like a story from A to B. And it's maybe not the deepest arc, but there is something for all of them to do. And that's not easy. This many characters, giving them all a role, making them all feel important, that's some heavy lifting by Stephen E. D'Souza. And from reading about production of this movie, apparently Capcom kept on feeding more and more characters from the video game to have them worked into the script. So the fact that he found something for all of them to do, or at least gave them all like a moment to shine, good stuff.
I agree. I think it's ensemble pieces can be very difficult to balance. And I'm not going to say that everybody has the same, level of dedication to their arc. And in some cases, you've got guys that are just villains and the end of their arc is being defeated. That's it. But to be able to build all of that and have it run through the film with a fairly short runtime, this movie's only about 100 minutes. It's pretty impressive to be able to stick the landing on a lot of that.
Well, let's jump into the scenes of this movie, starting with the best scene, or at least our favorite. Andrew, go ahead and kick us off. When is this movie firing on all cylinders? What is your favorite scene in Street Fighter?
My favorite scene is whenever Raul Julia is on my screen.
Yes.
It's but I'm gonna go with his final fight with Guile. Kind of led up to, it kind of starts at the Tuesday speech, but mostly his final fight with Guile, where he's kind of finally getting to fight him. I like this scene a lot because it does go out of its way to kind of set up a lot of these things to look like fighting stages. Like they start and they're on this bridge kind of above this weird command center they're in. And like, that's absolutely something I would expect to be a fighting level in a game where we're on this
100%.
Bridge just above a bunch of stuff. They kind of fall down. And again, it's like trying to frame it as like the 2D fighting style. And I'm sure that was a deliberate choice. I'm sure that was intentional. But I just think it adds a fun bit. But you get great banter here with Guile, and you get even greater banter by M. Bison, as he kind of initially has very little issue fighting Guile, and then eventually kind of loses the upper hand to him. But this is really kind of what the whole film builds to. Like, obviously, like I said, you've got all these characters, but pretty much from the first scene of this movie to the end is just waiting for this fight. That's pretty much what the entire movie builds to. I actually clocked it. Bison kills somebody less than 3 minutes into this movie, which is
Snaps
awesome.
their neck. Yes.
Just like, I was genuinely like, whoa, we're not slowing down. We're not easing into it. He's already breaking the dude's neck. So from 3 minutes on, you pretty much, and then like I said, the Guile interruption is not long after that, but this is building to this, and I think it delivers mostly on that promise. You get Jean-Claude doing Jean-Claude things. You get Raul Julia working. I mean, again, I know there's doubles in here, but there's stuff that he's clearly doing where I'm just like, wow, like, on panels that are sparking and blowing up and stuff like that. Like, at no moment would you have ever thought this dude had stomach cancer. Like, you would never have assumed any of it. It very much looked like the dude was taking some falls and taking some hits to make this look as real as possible, and that just makes it all the more impressive to me. And so, yeah, I'm going with the big final fight. You're off the air, Bison.
There's one part where Raul Julia, or as Bison, swings from one platform to another, like holding onto a rope, and I was trying to look really hard to see if it was a stunt double, because his face is in view, and I felt like it was him, but that's a pretty big stunt, even if he's sick or not. It's a big stunt for like a big actor to be doing, so I'm not sure if he did that. But definitely when he's up on wires, after he kind of gets electrocuted and gets his like superpowers, and he flies at Guile, that is Raul Julia up on wires, flying horizontally through the air, which is, like you said, just super, super impressive that he did that as, ill as he was at the time. So, yeah, awesome, man, great pick. It lives up to, the whole movie's been building up to it, this one-on-one fight. I think it lives up to it. It's really cool. There's a lot of cool Easter eggs in here as well. Guile gets to do his double flash kick, which is his super from Street Fighter 2, so it's a nice Easter egg from the video games. And also, I happened to text my friend Chad while I was watching this movie, because he is also a very big Street Fighter fan. We've played together a lot, and he mentioned that he had recently learned something about the movie that I'm going to share with all of you now. During this scene, in the dialogue, they each say their winning phrases from the video games to each other.
Oh, really?
After you beat someone, your character pops up and they like talk trash to the character you beat. And for Guile, it's "Are you man enough to fight with me?" which is his phrase. And then Bison says, "Anyone who opposes me will be destroyed." So they work that into the dialogue, which is, again, super fun Easter egg. Again, so puzzling because they change such
Changed so much.
big things, but it still will work in such specific stuff to this movie. But it totally works. It's a lot of fun. I love that fight. Man, I love when like he he defeats Bison, seemingly, right? And then he's talking to Cammy on his little device. Totally, I guess Star Trek did it first, but they're totally like predating FaceTime.
Yeah.
And then you see like the computer say like Bison life support activated, and then it shows him, and the suit that he wears apparently has a purpose, Andrew. It's got a built-in life support, and it says starting CPR, and you see the suit giving him chest compressions, like it lifts up and pushes down on his chest and revives him. It then fuels him with electricity to give him what in the video game is called his psycho power, but it gives him electrical powers. And he stands up and he zaps Guile with electricity. It's like the one time, I guess other than Blanca, where the movie really dives into some of the fantastical stuff from the video games and superpowers. And the fight keeps going. This is when Bison gets to actually fly around. And again, it's Raul Julia up on wires because he's a badass. And it's fun. Guile gets his big kick. He does ultimately destroy him. And it's a...
Or
it's a
does he?
Or does he? So there's a post-credit scene in this movie, which I had seen it a million times in the 90s. I never knew there was a post-credit scene. I just happened to let the movie keep playing after I watched it. And I was surprised. Did you know there's a post-credit scene before?
I knew there was one just by hearing about it. But none of the versions I ever saw, I never stuck around that long. So yeah, but it was cut out in theaters. So if you had stayed through the credits of Street Fighter, I can't imagine there were many people who did, you would not have seen it. But it was restored, apparently, for the home video releases. But apparently it was cut from the theatrical release just because Raul Julia had passed away so recently. They kind of thought it was a little... I don't think anybody would have faulted them for leaving it in, but I guess they felt it might have been a little bit in a bad taste
it's a
to kind of
tease for a
imply.
sequel. Bison's fist comes up through the debris to show that he's still alive, and it implies there's going to be a second movie, which obviously didn't happen, and obviously if it did, it wouldn't feature Raul Julia, so it is a very strange scene. So I get why it was left out, but I guess I get why now. Doesn't matter if you see it, because we all know the sequel's not happening, but very strange. But hey, great pick for best scene. I'm going to kind of agree with you, but also kind of expand my favorite scene to like the whole final act. I mean, can we do that? It's
sure,
all...
I'm going to allow it.
All one scene, because while we're watching that fight with Guile and Bison, we're cutting back to Honda and Zangief, or Ryu and Ken versus Vega and Sagat, or DJ making his escape. I mean, all this stuff is happening simultaneously to what the whole movie's been building to, and it all totally works for me. It's a lot of fun. Everybody gets in their video game costumes, and it's a blast. I've got to say, like, I'm not gonna sit here try to convince anybody this movie is a masterpiece. You know that's not what we do here. But I think this movie is... I mean, it has some production troubles. Everybody involved has talked about it. But ultimately, I think the tone is what Steven was going for when he wrote it. This is a action comedy. Like, 100%. Like, if you watch this movie and you're laughing, having a time... It's not because you're making fun of it. I mean, it might be, but it's also the movie wants you to laugh. There is clearly full-on comedic characters, even characters that aren't outright comedic, like maybe Guile still has quips. It still has stuff that's supposed to be funny. There's still comedic beats. There's a scene where Zangief and Honda are fighting through Bison's model of the building he wants to build, so they look like giants, and they starts playing Godzilla music as they fight in slow motion. I mean, it's 100% supposed to be hilarious.
Right, exactly. You're supposed to laugh at that. I mean, even Bison has lines where, like, they're looking at that model earlier in the film, and he's like, we should expand the food court. All the major franchises will want in. Like, that's a joke line. Like, you're supposed to chuckle at that. Like, ultimate humor of the line aside, like, that's clearly meant to, like, bring a moment of levity to it. Like, that's the design of it. So there very is clearly this intention of making it have, like I said, at bare minimum, quips. I wouldn't say this is like, Die Hard has its quips, but I would still say Die Hard is an action film. I would see this as a lot more of a balance, where there's definitely things that are meant to be outright more comedic. And like you said, I do absolutely believe that's the intention. I think he's definitely looking for that balance.
Let's not forget that Bison's flying desk is controlled by the Street Fighter arcade cabinet. It's literally 2 joysticks, your 3 punches and your 3 kicks. That's how he controls everything. And they put that in to be funny. It's not like, oh, look how cheesy this movie is. They couldn't afford the real controls. That was intentional. Like, that's right. The point of this movie. That's the
we're
tone
supposed to Leo point at that. We're supposed to go up, see it. Like, that's the idea. We're not supposed to, it's not supposed to be like oh God, I can't believe, like, it's all intentional. Like you said, you can argue the execution or how it lands or whatever that all you want, but like, that was clearly a deliberate design choice.
100%. I love the scene.
And he just starts button mashing at the end. He gets frustrated and does what all of us do. So it's perfect.
I love the scene here you mentioned earlier where DJ is making his escape with his chest full of riches, what he thinks is valuables. And Zangief tries to stop him. He's like, where are you going? We've got to fight our enemy here. And he tells him, like, what are you talking about? Bison's the bad guy. And Zangief is confused. He's like, General Bison? He's a bad guy? If you know this, then why do you serve him? And DJ is like, because he paid me a freaking fortune. And he runs off. And speaking of memes, Zangief just kind of turns to the camera and goes, you got paid? Just like that.
Way before, 15 years before we're the, 17 years before we're the Millers. You got paid?
But
I do.
Like, I knew it was coming. Like, there's like a good beat, a good pause, a good 5-second pause as he's like putting it together in his head. And I knew it was coming, and he delivers it perfectly. You got paid?
Exactly.
So good.
It is. And I do like Zangief's performance. I think he gets a lot of jokes like that where I think they land. I think it's fun.
Yeah, and I mentioned Dawson, who is gets some emotional depth in this movie. He's a very serious character, and he is supposed to be making Blanca this ultimate weapon, but he secretly lets him retain the capacity to still be good. They go through great lengths to explain how exactly that works, but he decides to stay behind with Blanca in the wreckage because Blanca decides that he is better off left behind, and Dawson stays with him. And Guile asks, he's like, you didn't do anything wrong. You don't deserve this. And Dawson drops this nugget. He says, if good men do nothing, that is evil enough. Damn, Dawson. I think we can all reflect on that, Andrew.
I think we can. You hear versions of that over the years. The classic, all it takes for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. But, yeah. Chris, I'm tired.
Let's pick things up with a fun M. Bison line, though. After he gets his powers, he taunts Guile. He says, you came here prepared to fight a madman, and instead you found a god. Damn, this guy's cool.
That dude is so cool. I do want to give a shout out to Marilyn Vance. The credits make a point of pointing out that she was the costume designer specifically for M. Bison. It does not imply whether or not she did any of the rest of the characters in the movie, but it does very much point out that she did Bison. Now, she is apparently, I had no idea who she was. The name didn't ring any bells right off the bat, but I went ahead and looked her up, and she'd done things like 48 Hours, Breakfast Club, Pretty in Pink, Ferris Bueller's Day Off, The Untouchables. Also did Predator, Die Hard, Pretty Woman, The Rocketeer, which we've all noted how cool the design and looks of everything in
Yeah,
that movie is. Did Street Fighter, also did Mystery Men, which, another movie
Awesome.
that has some really cool costume choices, especially in the final act where they all get their new looks. But yeah, and that's another thing in this movie, like Bison's look, his design. I think it's all very cool. It tries to find a way to kind of take his kind of what could be seen as over the top costume and kind of translate it. But they just really have fun with Bison in this movie too. Like I remember the scene where Chun-Li and Bison are fighting, and he like disappears into that room and puts the barrier down and pumps the gas into the room. And like everybody that's run in is passing out. So it's Ken, Ryu, Honda, Balrog, Chun-Li. They're all passing out, but then in the background you see Bison's fireplace, which is the look of his his medallion or whatever, his design.
The skull,
and like
yeah.
the skull, and then like the fire flames out of the mouth of it, and it like fades onto Bison's actual face as he like maniacally laughs and runs away.
It's
and
so good.
It's ridiculous. Not really ridiculous, but like it's over the top. It's clearly like playing it up for it's being hyperbolic with it to kind of make him even more over the top. And it all just works for me. Like there is not a single moment that Bison is on screen that I am not glued to the screen. He is endlessly captivating and entertaining in this movie.
All right, so you brought up that scene in Bison's lair where they do the cool fade from the fireplace to him.
Yes.
Let's talk about this whole scene. Let's talk about this lair specifically. So
Yes.
they captured the good guys, and in a scene that's a little bit, he's like, "But Chun-Li, take her to my lair," and it kind of implies something gross, but it never really gets there. But they're in his lair, and Bison's kind of like a gentleman. Like he changes out of his like military garb into like his casual garb, but he goes behind like some Venetian blinds to change. He's not like being gross in front of her. It's like he just like wants to have a conversation. It's the tone's a little weird, but there's a lot of stuff in this scene in this room that I want to talk about. For one, it's where he delivers his classic line that we already played earlier. Very cool. But also, there is a rack of all of his different hats in different colors, and all those colors correspond to his alternate colors from Street Fighter 2. Cool little Easter egg.
Yep.
Andrew, there's also a painting in this layer. Did you notice the painting?
No, I don't think I did.
Andrew, it is the John Wayne Gacy self-portrait. The John Wayne Gacy as a clown.
Yeah.
With the M. Bison hat on. Andrew is dead, people. I don't know what it means. Did John Wayne Gacy paint that for him?
Why is that there?
Did he paint that? What is it? It's so weird.
Why?
I'll put a screenshot of that on social media or whatever, but it is so bizarre. I don't know what it's trying to say. It's supposed to be like a fun Easter egg, like
Oh my god,
serial killer painting. But it's got the M. Bison. That exists somewhere, Andrew. There's a painting of the
There's
John
a painting of John Wayne Gacy as a clown with a bison hat on. Like you could have done anything. You could have done like a portrait of George Washington. You could have done like the Mona Lisa. You could have literally done anything, and you chose that one. Is it because he's the bad guy? I guess.
I think,
but
I think honestly a Hitler reference would have been less weird.
Yes,
like, that's still inappropriate. I don't think they should have done that. But like, dictator, bad guy, I get that. But a serial killer? What in the world are we doing here? It was,
especially when he has all these speeches where like he's trying to like he wants to create super soldiers for good. Like obviously he's delusional. Like he doesn't present himself as a villain. And that's actually what's interesting about this scene. You mentioned it's got that kind of setup of like, take her to my chambers and I'll give her a private interview. But then like when you get there, you realize that that's actually kind of what he actually wants to do. Like he's trying to get himself on the record as what he's trying to do and what he wants to do and how he's not the bad guy. So like I said, it is a weird setup, but like genuinely it ends up being kind of true that really all he wants is to just more attention. because to this movie, he has not made any public comments. That's the thing they established at the beginning, is that when he communicates out to Guile, that's like the first he's spoken in a long time. And but again, that it's in keeping with his character that like he would really literally just be like, take her to my private chambers for a personal interview, and everyone's like, eh. And then, but he actually literally just wants to do the
what he's
interview.
doing. Yeah,
that's literally it. And again, it's yeah, Raul Julia. Like, I don't know what research he did to get here, but he nailed all of it.
100%. And that painting is so bizarre, but there's a lot of, throughout Bison's lair, like propaganda style posters on the wall. Most of them you don't get like a super good shot at. I think they're references to real life stuff, but it is fun seeing all like the background details of his campaign, and he thinks his bison bucks are going to be worth a lot of money under his new rule, and dude's a madman.
He knows exactly what he's doing. Maybe, sure, but doesn't quite go all in his favor. But he's got all these layers. When he gives Sagat the bison bucks first, and he's like, these aren't worth the paper they're printed on, and he's like, but they'll be worth like 5 British pounds per dollar once I kidnap the queen and demand that be the exchange rate. And I was like, I don't think that's how the economy and global economics work, Bison, but you believe in yourself. Go do it.
Valuable
You do
as
you.
Shroot bucks.
Valuable as Dogecoin these days.
I love that every time we go to like an establishing shot in Shadowloo, it doesn't matter if we're in like the good guy camp or bad guy camp, you always hear like this DJ over an intercom somewhere. It doesn't matter where we are. And it's like, I feel like they recorded these things afterwards and threw them into the movie just for some more comedic beats. One of the ones is what I used for the opening line. You just hear him go, "Good morning, Shadowloo." And there's another time where it's just offhand. He's like, remember, if a hand grenade gets thrown to you, pick it up and throw it back in their face. It's just these little quips over intercoms throughout the movie. And then at the end of the movie, over the closing credits, in between songs, he jumps back in and just delivers some DJ style comedy in between songs, like in like the middle of the
credits,
middle of the credits, in between two songs. He comes on and says, "How many bison troopers does it take to steal a light bulb?" 51. One to screw it in, and the other 50 to steal it from a 7-Eleven. I've got tons of these, folks. It's not even like a good joke.
It's not. I just imagine that like Steven was just like jotting down lines like every other day where something came to him, and he just had some dude like read a bunch of them and then just threw them in wherever he felt like it. Who was that guy's voice, I wonder?
I wonder if that is Steven. That's our third thing we need to ask Steven.
Well, I'm on the IMDb now.
Shadowloo DJ, radio DJ.
I don't even know like what you would call that. AN Forces DJ is an Adrian Cronauer, born on my dad's birthday, but 10 years before.
Your dad has all kinds of connections to this movie.
He does. Apparently, he's just a TV radio voice guy. So
perfect.
Tracks. Perfect.
Look, I've got a ton of more stuff like in my notes, mostly just stuff from the video game that maybe to the old Leo point, like a lot of backgrounds from the characters' stages make their way into in the movie. Like Sagat's stage has this big statue laying down, and you see that like in his headquarters, like a small version of it in the background. A lot of fun details, a lot of cool Easter eggs that are just really cool, nice to appreciate. And I gotta say, I mean, if it wasn't clear already, I like this movie. I enjoy this movie. I've probably made it clear enough that there's departures from the video games, but that doesn't put that aside. Take the movie for what it is. It's a fine, fun 90s action comedy.
Yeah, I agree. I think if you, I don't like putting it that way. Like if you accept it for what it is, but there's lots to enjoy. I think regardless of anything else, I think if you come into this movie just to watch it as it is, I think there's plenty of cool stuff. And if bare minimum, Raul Julia's performance as M. Bison is worth watching it alone, because it is definitely an instance where somebody left everybody else in the dust, putting themselves into the role versus everybody else in the movie. That's not to say anybody else in the movie is not giving it their all, but Raul Julia giving it his all is on a completely different level from everybody else.
Over in our Discord, which, if you're not there, what are you waiting for? Check our show notes. There's a link. Just click it. You'll be right in, and you can hang out with us and talk and write in for future episodes. Like this message we got from Brandon Wilson, who says, I think Raul Julia was great in his final film and delivers the movie's best line. And we all know what he's going to say. For me, it was a Tuesday. Perfect. But he also has this interesting note. I think that the design of Ryu was based off of Jean-Claude Van Damme, but he ends up playing Guile in the movie. That is kind of funny. I mean, I think Ryu and Ken are... You can kind of see the inspiration from the video games, but it does a bit look like a Bloodsport or Kickboxer era Jean-Claude Van Damme costume, right?
A little bit, yeah.
I can see that.
Yeah.
Look, again, folks, we're not trying to say that all these movies that we cover are actually masterpieces, but this one is.
It is. There's no question.
All right, Andrew, almost through the month of July, almost through our list of poorly received video game adaptations. At least for this go-round, you can bet we're going to revisit this category in the future because it's kind of a fruitful one. There's a lot of them out there. But this go-round, we're going to wrap it up with Mortal Kombat, the 1995 movie, next week. But again, hop into that Discord and let us know what poorly received video game adaptations you would like to see covered in the future. But Andrew, now it's time for Question of the Week. This one comes from Mike Lynch, who asks, have you seen the entire filmography of any longtime actor or director? That's a good question.
It is.
I know I have. Actor or director? Well, director is easy. I can think of a few. I've seen every Quentin Tarantino movie.
That's a
I haven't seen Four Rooms, but he only directed a segment of that, so don't hold that against me.
It's not great.
That's what I've heard, so it's fine. I've seen every Christopher Nolan movie.
That's a vibe.
Again, those are both like 10 movies each, so that's not...
Yeah, it's not...
Maybe not super impressive, but those are definitely the first ones to come to mind. Every single... I've seen every Steven... I keep getting his name wrong. Steven E. D'Souza movie. Street Fighter.
The one, yeah. I
haven't seen Coldfinger though, so
they haven't. So I've seen most of Denis Villeneuve's movies. I know I've seen everything from Incendies on. I think he does have a couple.
Have you seen Enemy?
Though I have seen Enemy, yeah.
Oh, okay. I've bought Enemy a while back on sale. I haven't watched it yet. Here's all I know about the movie. The ending sticks with you, I think is how I heard it described, or it's great. Like,
yeah.
Do I need to like make sure I'm like in a good space emotionally before I watch it, or?
I don't think so. It's just a very it's a very kind of strange metaphoric ending.
Gotcha.
I've seen every David Lynch movie. That's an easy one for me.
That one's been impressive. That's a good number there.
That is. He's been making movies for a while.
How about the Coen brothers?
I've seen most of the Coen brothers. I'm going to do a quick little check here. Yes, I have seen every Coen brothers movie.
Wow.
I remember some much more than others, but I know I've watched all of these at least once. I would say I've seen all of Alfred Hitchcock's movies, but I know I haven't because some of them are lost. But also, I know there's stuff from the 20s and 30s that just, it's out there, but the scans are so poor and so bad that, like, there's several of his that I was like, oh, let's check out this, and I just can't do it. It's just it's not even the movie itself, it's so poorly preserved that it's been, that it's just it's difficult to watch. Kurosawa's another one that I go pretty far back on. I don't know if I don't think I go all the way back. But actors, I think, is the more interesting.
That's a tough one. So I'm trying to think. I mean, every single movie, man. Immediately I go to think of like some of my favorite actors. So like Ryan Gosling. I love the dude's work. No way I've seen every single one of his movies. I pulled up his filmography, and I will say I've seen most of them. I mean, I've seen all the big movies. I've seen Drive, Crazy Stupid Love, Blade Runner 2049. But I've also seen things like The United States of Leland, Lars and the Real Girl, Murder by Numbers, that weird Sandra Bullock movie. So I've seen some of the smaller ones. Fracture, a movie that most people have probably forgotten about. I own that movie. I think it's pretty good. Stay, I've championed that movie a lot. So I've seen a lot of his work, but definitely I haven't seen Blue Valentine. I haven't seen The Ides of March. I haven't seen Gangster Squad, so I can't say that I've seen every Ryan Gosling movie.
I have seen every Shane Black movie now that I think about it. He's only directed 4 though, so it's not hard.
I haven't seen The Predator yet, so I guess I'm not there yet.
Even if you include all the things that he just wrote, it's still only like 11 things. It's not very difficult to do. But I can't think. Man, actors is a tough one because they just, once you're an actor, you do so much. Like, I even try to think about the people that are like notoriously like stingy on the things they do, like somebody like Daniel Day-Lewis or something. And like, I'm just gonna look at his filmography. But even again, he goes back to like the 70s. So like, it's interesting looking at his film and television credits. It's not as many as I thought it would be, but I still know I haven't seen them all because there's just too much here. There's just so much. I can't think of a single actor I've seen everything they've done.
That is a tough one. Mike, I wonder if you had someone in mind when you asked this question. Like, have you seen every movie from a certain actor? If so, we certainly want to know about. Follow up with that question and let us know. Or anybody out there listening, if you've seen an impressive number of movies from one actor, definitely let us know about it. Or maybe like, what's the longest string of movies? Like, I'm looking at Johnny Depp, who at one point in my life I would have said he's my favorite actor. I feel a little differently now, but I've seen a lot of his movies, although I quit caring about his movies at some point. But there's an era like in the 90s and early 2000s where I probably saw like a string of movies, all like probably like a 10 or 12 streak of movies of his. But even then, he made like these weird indie movies, French movies that nobody knows about.
Yeah.
So, damn, this is a tough one.
I've seen all of Michael Mann's movies. I'm still just thinking of directors. That's all I can do. No, the actors is a tough one. Like, I mean, like even other, like I actually haven't seen all of Kevin Smith's movies. I fell off somewhere in the 5-6 years ago. But
you haven't seen Yoga Hosers, Andrew?
I saw 20 minutes of Yoga Hosers.
You saw enough.
Like Ryan Gosling's another guy who, like, if I go back, I probably have a good run of his, especially now, especially once we buy all those Barbie tickets for next year.
I can't wait for that movie. It's gonna be so good.
Dude, it comes out the day before my birthday next year. Thank you, Greta Gerwig, for thinking of me in this time of trouble. Yeah, like even somebody like Jean-Claude Van Damme, like I like thinking of like his filmography because like especially guys like him, there's this level of, they start doing direct-to-video movies a lot just to do things. And looking at Jean-Claude Van Damme's filmography, he's apparently in Minions: The Rise of Gru as a character named John Claude with a W. So I apparently have to go watch that now. Thanks.
Gotta see it now.
Thanks, internet. Thanks a lot. But yeah, it's so because actors. I would be very curious if there was somebody you had in mind. Because especially like long time actors, 'cause like it's easy to find somebody that just kind of showed up a few years ago and be like, oh yeah, I've seen all their stuff. But like when they've only been in like 6 things, that's pretty easy. But if you've got somebody that you think you've seen all the movies for, I would be very interested in hearing it.
Okay,
Andrew, and where Chris would be a good place to tell us such a thing.
You can hop into our Discord. There's a link in the show notes. You can hit us up on social media at BOTRcast or shoot us an email, bestofthedressPod@gmail.com. Andrew, I want to wrap up this question with this because I think you're gonna have a pretty good streak here. I am gonna read you Arnold Schwarzenegger's filmography, and you're gonna tell me if you've seen the movie. Okay?
Okay.
We're gonna start with more recent and work our way backwards. Let's see here. Terminator: Dark Fate.
Yes.
I'm skipping over documentaries and limited releases. Maggie.
Yes.
Terminator Genisys.
Underrated performance from Arnold and Maggie. I recommend everybody check it out. Yes, I've seen Terminator Genisys.
All right. Expendables 3.
Yes.
Sabotage.
Yes.
Really? I haven't even heard
Yes.
of that one. Okay.
It was loosely based off an Agatha Christie book, which meant I had to watch it.
Of course. Okay. Escape Plan.
Yes.
The Last Stand.
Yes.
The Expendables 2.
Yes.
Expendables 1.
Yes.
Well, that's a cameo.
I have seen it though. Around the World in 80 Days.
Are you looking at the list too?
No, I just know that
You just
there's
knew
a
that I was gonna
giant
say
gap,
that?
and I know he has a cameo. Well, you said like
Amazing.
around. You got like the around
Okay.
out.
All right.
So.
Well, it's still impressive. You knew what I was going to say.
Yep.
He also has a cameo in The Rundown. Have you seen that one?
Yes, it's
Okay.
Face Off with the Rock. I've seen that as well.
All right. Terminator 3.
Also, underrated movie by The Rock. It's not underrated, but it's one of The Rock's better movies, and nobody talks about it.
I love how Ernie Reyes Jr. hops up like halfway in that movie. It's really fun.
Yeah, just fights him. Yep.
Yeah.
But
Terminator 3.
Yep.
Collateral Damage.
Yep.
The Sixth Day.
Yep.
End of Days.
Yep.
Batman and Robin.
Yep.
Jingle All the Way.
Yep.
Eraser.
Yep.
Junior.
Yep.
True Lies.
Uh-huh.
Last Action Hero.
Oh God.
That's
Am
a
I
yes.
about to reveal that I've seen all of Arnold's movies? Yes, I've seen Last Action Hero.
Terminator 2.
Of course.
Kindergarten Cop.
Absolutely.
Total Recall.
Yep.
Twins.
Yep.
Red Heat.
Uh-huh.
The Running Man.
Yep.
Predator.
Absolutely.
Raw Deal.
Oh, hold on. Let me understand what Raw Deal is.
1986 American action film directed by John Irvin. Story of Sergio Leone's screenwriters.
Yep, I have seen this.
You seen it?
I have.
Amazing. All right, let's keep rolling. Commando.
Yep, of course.
Red Sonja.
Red Sonja.
Is that how you say it? It's a J. I don't know.
It's Red Sonja. It's a spinoff of Conan. Yes, and I have seen it.
All right. Terminator.
Of course.
Conan the
Wait,
Destroyer.
Terminator? Terminator. Not
Terminator?
familiar. No. Yes.
Conan the Destroyer.
Yes.
Conan the Barbarian.
Of course.
The Villain? This has to be the end of the line, right? What is this?
What is that? Yeah, hold on.
It's a Western comedy film. Starring Kirk
All right.
Douglas and Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Well, yeah, I would say combo broken. But either way,
but I would
that's
say this doesn't. I mean, what is this? Stay Hungry, The Long Goodbye, and Hercules in New York. I mean, that's like before Arnold was Arnold. So I think you've seen from everything Arnold's done since Conan the Barbarian, all the
That's
way
nuts.
through Terminator: Dark Fate. Andrew, I think
That's
qualifies.
a pretty
I think
long
that's
run. Yeah.
pretty good.
Yeah. I did not realize that about myself, folks. I'm going to have to go think about my life.
I think out of principle alone, Andrew, you've got to go watch Hercules in New York, The Long Goodbye, Stay Hungry, and The Villain. I mean, why not?
The Long Goodbye, I've actually seen The Long Goodbye because it's Robert Altman's adaptation of a Raymond Chandler novel. I just don't remember that Arnold's in it.
He has an uncredited cameo, so that's pretty. I mean, that's not really. But The Villain, Stay Hungry, and Hercules in New York. How about that?
I've seen Hercules in New York.
Oh my gosh, Andrew! There's only 2 Arnold movies you haven't seen.
Apparently,
Stay Hungry and The Villain. I'm
Hold
sure
on,
they're
The
streaming
Villain.
somewhere.
a beautiful woman is being escorted across the floor of a handsome stranger. Bad guy. Yeah, I don't even know if I've heard of The Villain. Like,
I have not.
Jesus Christ, and I certainly like. if I've heard of Stay Hungry, it's not. Where is Arnold? He's third on the list here. Oh, Jeff Bridges in Stay Hungry. All right. Interesting.
And Sally Field?
Interesting. Yeah. Robert Englund? Holy shit. Pardon my French, folks. Okay.
You've got some homework.
I've got some work to do. The Villain and Stay Hungry, and that finishes Arnold's filmography for me.
Andrew, before you watch those movies, I just have to remind you, maybe not every movie is great.
But all movies have greatness.
Thank you to Mark Benavides for singing our theme song. Follow him on Instagram at NotThatMarkAnthony. And thanks to Mitch for the music. Find more of his work on Twitter at MitchMakingMusic and check the show notes for a link to his SoundCloud. If you enjoyed this episode, please share it with a friend. It's the only way that we grow. And follow us on social media at BOTRcast. Thank you.
Did not know, but apparently it was cut out of the theatrical release. So if you did see it in theaters and stayed through the credits, you stayed for nothing, you dumbass. Sorry.